So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'd stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, would you like to give us the roll call?
Kevin Ryman.
Here.
Michael Cox. Peter Hansel.
Here.
Jamie Girardi.
Here.
Roberto Seiss. Chris Williams.
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray.
Present. Okay. Are there minutes to be approved?
I move approval of minutes from 9:27 and 10:11.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion of the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I note the publication?
Please do, yeah.
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on November 2nd and 30th, 2018, and December 2nd, 2018.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so if anybody plans to give testimony or come speak today, if you'll stand, raise your right hand and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth to help you God? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. So I'd just like to welcome everybody here today, and for those of you who aren't usually at these meetings, the Planning Commission is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice a month. The Planning Commission serves as a local planning agency. The Planning Commission holds public hearings and transmits to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan amendment, land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commission meeting. And we do have those dates available if you need them. So we have time for public comment, or is there any public comment from anything that is not on today's agenda? See no public comment. These are the hearing procedures. The petitioners will have 5 minutes to be heard. The applicants and the opposition, if any, will be granted 3 minutes. And then the petitioner will be granted 3 minutes to rebut or answer questions from any opposition or people who have questions about the project. In the case where somebody has requested additional time and has been approved, and I think we have 2 of those, they will be granted extra time, or have been granted extra time. I think one is for Gina Hester. Is Gina here? And one is for, who's the other one for?
Barbara Wilhite.
Barbara, okay, Barbara, yeah. For 30 minutes, I believe. And your, Gina is 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Okay. Let's see. So now I think we can proceed to the agenda. I guess we'll start with P1.
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. If I may actually proceed to PC3 because it's a continuance request.
Okay.
Okay. Item PC3 is PDD 19-0333. It's in the name of Cypress Creek Town Center MPUD, and it's a request for continuance to January 10th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay. Is that the only one?
That's a continuance item? Yes, sir.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the continuance?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. Now I will proceed to the consent agenda. Item PC1 is PDD 19CU13 in the name of BBL Tampa Group LLC, Springs Suites North Tampa at Land O'Lakes. It's for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and liquor, on-premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a hotel with outside sales and service of alcoholic beverages on a pool deck in a master plan unit development district. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions from Planning and Development Department.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Okay, is there any? Okay. All right, and this is on consent, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is anyone here to object? Okay. No objections?
Item PC2 is PDD 19CU14. It's conditional use Shops and Ballantrae LLC. It's for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer and wine only, on-premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a multi-tenant retail building with restaurants in a master plan unit development district. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions from Planning and Development Department.
All right. Is the applicant present? Okay, anyone here to object? I see no objections.
Item PC4 is a special exception in the name of Barrett Harding Insurance, Inc. It is PDD 197373. It's for a professional services office in an ER estate residential district. If I may ask the Planning Commission that staff's recommendation is approval with conditions, with the change that we are striking through condition number 2, which is on page 61 of your agenda packet, which calls out days and hours of operation. We would like to strike that condition through in its entirety.
Okay, and is the applicant present? Okay, and do you agree with the striking of those conditions? Okay, and anyone here to object? See no objections?
Item PC5 is PDD 197372 in the name of Gary L. Blackwell Investments, Inc. It's a change in zoning from an AR agricultural residential and RMH mobile home districts to an MF1 multiple family medium density district. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval from the Planning and Development Department.
Okay, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? I see no one.
Okay, and we do have an additional item on the consent agenda, which is called out in your packet as P8, should have been PC8. I'm going to read the item by title. There was a bit of a change on the title. I'm not sure if you were given a copy of what the new title reads.
Yeah, we were. It's up here.
Okay. And the clerk's office has been provided a copy of the new title. I'm going to read the item by title. It is it's CPAL 18010. It's a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. Cypress Creek Town Center, large-scale comprehensive plan map amendment to the future land use maps, map 2-15 and sheet 21, changing from ROR retail office residential to PD plan development on 427.1 acres, more or less, of real property located generally along State Road 56 at the intersection of realigned State Road 54, adjacent to and west of I-75 and north of the Hillsborough County line, and a text amendment amending the sub-area policy, future land use 7.1.2, Cypress Creek Town Center. I will say this is item PDD 19-1555, and on this item you're actually sitting as the local planning agency, and the recommendation in this case is for you to find the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners on the item.
All right, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? Okay, I see no objection.
And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, can I have a motion on the consent agenda? Can I have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
So you're moving for approval of the consent agenda as?
And to be clear, that includes P8, even though it wasn't listed as consent,
Right.
correct? Is that part of your motion?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, including P8. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. And now we will present item PC6, which is a conditional use. And as you correctly stated, Mr. Chairman, there's 30 minutes granted to Ms. Barbara Wilhite, and there's 15 minutes granted to, I believe, Ms. Hester on the item. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Amy Heiler with Planning and Development. So item P6 is going to be a conditional use in the name of Carol A. Roth. The application is, or the matter CU 1903 is for the operation of a power glide launch and landing field in an AC district. The site is currently located in central Pasco County at the southeast corner of the intersection of McKendree Drive and Tyndall Road. As stated, conditional use is for a power glide launch and landing field in an AC district. It is located in the central market area. The site contains a single-family dwelling on approximately 19.51 acres. The applicant is requesting a conditional use in order to launch and land an ultralight vehicle, a motorized parachute device known as power glides, on a portion of the subject property. The applicant does not propose any runway or hangars. This is a visualization of the site access, which is off of McKendree Road, a 2-lane, 50-foot wide, county-maintained lime rock roadway. The surrounding zoning is characterized by agricultural residential development and Category 1 wetlands, and is required by LDC Section 805 to have a 25-foot upland wetland buffer around the Category 1 wetland. The future land use, or the subject area, has a future land use classification of AG, agriculture, under the comprehensive plan. And this is their proposed site plan for the landing zone. The powered paragliders takeoff landings shall be limited to the portion of the overall property as shown on the site plan submitted within this application. They will not encroach on the Category 1 wetland and buffer. It is also good to know that this site is currently within Connected City, which was approved or adopted in 2017. The subject site is located within the business core zone of Connected City and pursuant to Section 136.3246 Florida statute. The intent of the character of the business core zone is to create a technology-driven business community characterized by high-density mixed uses, including multi-story residential and non-residential densities. The surrounding property owners decide to opt into Connected City's comprehensive plan. The existing land use of the paraglide launch and landing site may be incompatible with the intended business core zone and surrounding development with the intent of the Connected City's comprehensive plan. With that being said, we approve with conditions of the proposed CU 1903. I would like to go over briefly with some of these conditions because they are applicable to the Connected City core. So some of the conditions that are being proposed is we are limiting the use to 10 years until build out. At that time, they will require, after approval, it is subject to expire within 10 years unless the applicant initiates in writing a request to the county to conduct an administrative review to extend the expiration. The second condition is the owner and applicant must comply by the Federal Aviation Administration regulations and policies. Now this one we are going to amend briefly just on what it says. What we're going to state now is instead of, oh, I passed it. Oops, sorry. So the owner and applicant must comply with applicable Federal Aviation Administration, FAA regulations and policies for, and then we're going to add including ultralight vehicles as defined in the Federal Aviation Regulation Part 103 and enter any related FAA advisory circulars. It is also an option to include Part 91, which is the general operations of aircraft. The third condition is going to be power paragliders. Takeoffs and landings shall be limited to the portion of the overall property as shown in the site plan and will not encroach in the Category 1 wetland. There shall be no lights on the takeoff landing area other than landing and takeoff ground lights that mark a safety zone. There shall be no powered paragliding events where admission is charged. There shall be no spectating by the general public on the property. There shall be no training of the general public. No per head or per use fee shall be charged for the takeoff landing area. And the use of the takeoff landing area shall be of private invitation only. No signage shall be located on the subject property identifying it or adversely advertising it used as a takeoff landing area. Power paraglider takeoff landings may only occur during the hours of 8 a.m. and dusk. And the conditional use does not restrict the property owner from using the property for any uses or activities permitted in the LDC AC zoning district, and then abides by the normal regulation standards that we put for conditional uses. So we are attempting, with the current development of the area, it is still predominantly rural, but since it is within connected cities, there is going to be a different density, different development over a period of time. So we're trying to acknowledge and work with the applicant to allow them to use a paraglide now, but still be aware of the proposed development for connected city in the future. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay.
And we do have the Gina Hester and Barbara Wilhite.
Okay, Barbara represents the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah. Barbara, you wanna speak first, or you wanna reserve time? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Amy? No? Okay.
Barbara Wilhite, 2523 Permit Place, Newport Richey, Florida, 34655 for the applicant. Randy Crouch is going to actually walk you through power paragliding, not something that we all experience every day. This sounds very formal, conditional use for a takeoff and landing field. It really is just a field, you'll see. We're just talking about being able to operate powered paragliders on this property. The staff has said that we needed to go through this process for the applicant to allow for the operation of power paragliders on our property.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. So let me have Randy come up here and then we can answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Randy, if you just give us your name and address, please.
Randall Crouch, 19248 Sunset Bay Drive, Land O'Lakes, Florida, 34638.
Thank you.
I'll let Barbara finish passing out. These are going to be a direct mirror on what I'm going to show in the PowerPoint, just for guide-along
Okay.
purposes. Thank you. All right. The first slide, it's up there, is just basically your, we're going to call it Jacora Field, because that's what me and Carol has named it, just to give a title to it, versus the field. It's just showing the survey overlay for your follow-along FY purposes. Next slide, please. Slide 2 is basically a Google map, a recent Google map shot of the property, and I've overlaid the borderline of what we use as said Jacora Field. And that right there, those arrows depict the direction of launch if we had to launch towards the west. As you see, that the roads are marked McKendree and Tyndall for guidance purposes. Mm-hmm. And we have, if I was launching to the west, the start for there is marked. Next slide, please. That slide is also just mirrored from the one previously just now, is just overlaid now on the survey slide, just for easier purposes following along. Again, launching to the west is directional. Now this is our first video right here, and this is going to, before you started, this is actually me doing this footage, and I'm flying over the property, over Jacora Field. I'm going to show, I'm actually videoing another co-pilot that is actually taking off, going to the west from the Jacora Field, just a demonstration of how it is. Play, please. As you can see right now, I'm facing northbound towards State Road 52. Okay. All right. Not
Quick
applicable.
flight.
Okay.
Very stable.
Okay. All right, so we'll just skip that. All right, the next slide, number 5. There we go. Is actually now reverse the pattern. If we was having to launch towards the east, there on the field, we have marked the word start. There's those 3 starting points if we had to launch with east or any kind of east component wind. That's the way we'd go. As you see, as we approach the end of the field towards the property line between Gina and Carol, we could actually peel to, the normal proceeding is peel to the north or either bank to the right. We have plenty of, with that amount of real estate, climb out to safely climb over for us and any kind of the property or trees or any vegetation. We're looking at about 200 feet at that when we do that left or right turn at that point. So it's not a hazard to anybody, including the pilot. Next slide. And that's also slide 6 just really puts that launch pattern over the survey as previous slides, just for easier follow along. Mm-hmm. All right, slide 7 or page 7 is when we have to land from the landing towards the west, coming from the east. Now you see our glide path is over Gina's property as it comes in, but unfortunately the video is not going to show. We have a follow-on video of exactly that pattern at about 200. The general rule is about 100 to 200 feet up, right where that arrows begins, on the far right. We kill our motors, and you come in for that as safety purposes. We don't want to. If you're landing and say for example, you have 2 left feet, you're landing that day, the last thing you want and you fall is a spinning propeller cutting off your ankles or your Achilles heel. So the general practice is, and we do it, every pilot, including myself and the others, a couple that uses the field, kill the motor about 200 feet up, and that creates a glide plane where it's totally silent, and we come in and we launch, landing at about where those arrows split off and walking it out to about the center of the field. That's our landing when we're coming in from the west. Next slide, please. And that really just, again, is just putting what I just spoke of, the previous slide, on the survey, just for easier guidance. Also, by putting these on this survey, I want to depict and point out that we're farther enough north of the wetland border that we're nowhere, I don't know the exact measurement, but it has to be at least 50 or 75 feet from that dotted line that symbolizes the, conservation or forest or wetland area. So we're definitely right closer to the house part of the property, not encroaching that area. Next slide, please. This would be the video that I was talking about where my colleague right there is killing the motor at that height, which is about 150, 200 feet up, where he is actually silent running. And he would come in. That right there was looking towards the east, and he is really right over the southern part of Gina's property, pretty much where the field opens to the forest. But like I said, he's totally at about 150, 200 feet there, motor cut off, and on a solid trajectory path for landing at the middle of Jacora Field with no problems. Next slide. Page 10. That right there would be a video. He's actually coming in, landing. He's coming in from the north, and he's coming over right there. He's coming over at Carol's property, right over the large pine trees right there of Tyndall Road. And he would come in straight and land about center of the field, coming in from the north, heading south. Next slide, please. Page 11. Oh, did we figure out how to play the video? That'd be great. Awesome. Any questions thus far that I can answer?
Yeah,
Anything from here?
question.
I think it's pretty clear.
I have a
Sir,
question. How far,
Oh, you have a question, Chris?
Yes.
Go ahead.
how long can a flight last, or how far
If-
do you go?
If we go up on a tank of gas, which a typical tank is about 2 gallons, you can get about an hour of flight time per gallon. So you go up with a full 2 gallons, 2 hours of taking it easy flying. You can get up there and you can do some more acrobatics or stuff. You can burn the fuel more, but conservatively speaking, about 2 hours. Also, I'd like to point out while you're still doing that, I know one of the provisions was flying from 8 a.m. to dusk. Well, we fall under FAA rules for that for flight times. Those are 30 minutes after 30 minutes before the sun rises in the morning and 30 minutes after the sun sets in the evening is our allowable flight times. So given the time of year with daylight savings or whatever, that could fluctuate. So we fall, since we are under FAR Part 1, FAR Part 103.1.15, which you'll see in the slides, the last slides, 17 and 18, pages 18, you'll see that that's our times that we fall up under those guidance of the FAA, those time frames. So I would motion to not really fall on the 8 a.m. because the reason why in the morning is really crucial to us to fly within the perimeters given to us in the FAA because we are very acceptable to turbulence and bad weather. And when we get a good morning to fly, it's very calm and that's favorable for us to have an enjoyable flight. So that's why we launch right at that, usually that right in the mornings, right at that sunrise time.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I realize the objector hasn't spoken yet, but I believe they live to the west of the site. They live east?
Shakur, right, Gina, in that picture right there, she's the property to the right, to the far right. You see there's a building structure there with like a mint green roof that's, I believe, is a barn, and her house resident is exactly to the right of that. And you can see there's a property line that goes down between Carol's and Gina's property by those sporadic trees right there.
So my question for you is there a reason you can't do all of your takeoffs and landings to the west?
On the field, on the.
Yeah, I mean, you're showing both flight patterns,
I understand.
east and
Okay.
west. And so my question to you is,
Yes.
knowing that you have an objector to the east, is there a reason you can't restrict your takeoff and landings to only go west?
Correct. We are restricted to the wind direction, whether it be 2 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour. So if there's a wind coming from, say, if there's any kind of wind coming from the west, we have to launch into that wind for safety purposes. I mean, we're taking off running with our feet. We got a motor on our back, as crude as it sounds. So we're any kind of wind out there, you need to run into it. If you're running downwind with the wind, it becomes a safety hazard because that parachute may not come from the ground up in a safe manner. It may lag behind. You could then fall, or it could be entangled into the propeller, which is trying to.
Which way is the wind usually blowing in that area? I don't.
In the morning time, usually you have a wind coming from the east, and then in the evening time, you usually have a sea breeze, which is the wind coming from the west northwest. So the way the field is right there, you see that box, it's kind of rectangular, elongated. Just so happens that's the way the winds typically are. Say if we had in the morning time, if you have a wind coming from the east, then we would line up and take off near the McKendree Road side because we want to launch into. It's like any aircraft. You go into when you take off from the airports at major airlines and big jets. They always land or take off into the wind and reverse it according to the wind pattern. We're no different. So we're a little bit more timid when it comes to even just a 1 mile an hour or 2 mile per hour breeze because we're so light and we don't got wheels, we got feet, and we're just a little bit more delicate when it comes to wind. So that's why it changes on whatever side of the field we would go according to the weather.
And how many takeoffs and landings are you doing a day, typically?
That also depends on the weather. Like, say, for example, this month. It's been some windy and cold weather. This month, actually, let me use the month of November. For the month of November, we may have had 3 or 4 times the whole month flights because it was getting cold. Sometimes the winds this time of year. But let's take a typical summertime pattern where it's more, the winds are lighter and the weather's a little bit more conducive for us. We may have, say the month of June, you may have 6 or 7 launches in the month. And then maybe twice that depending on if there's afternoon thunderstorms. And unfortunately, this region of Florida generates a lot of afternoon thunderstorms. So typically, we find ourselves flying more in the morning in the summer than in the evening here due to that factor. So like I said, taking that into effect, weather plays a big role. I would say worst case scenario, or the mini type, most cases we would have about 7 or 8 on a typical summer month launches. That could double if there's not a lot of afternoon thunderstorms. And typically in the wintertime, where you have a lot more cold fronts come through this area, colder, windier conditions, that grounds us. You can't fly. You're just grounded because of safety purposes. I would say 3, maybe 4 launches in a month in the winter months here.
Okay, thank you. You answered my questions.
I have a question. You indicated that, I believe you said the FAA dictates what time you can take off and land and those types of things. But in here, one of the conditions, number 11, it uses may only occur during certain hours. So is there a conflict between what you're saying about when you can take off and one of the conditions in here?
Well, since we fly under visual flight rule only, VFR, we don't have instruments or anything like that. So then we're subject to the daylight time because we don't have instruments. You can't fly at night. So, and then that time by FAA is extended till twilight hours, and that is only if you have a operational strobe that is visible for 2 miles.
Okay, so then, therefore, you're not in disagreement with condition number 11 here.
With the 8 a.m.?
It's 8 a.m. to dusk.
8 a.m. to dusk?
Correct.
I would say if sometimes in the summer, sunrise is at 6:45, 6:30. So we would be launching at 6:30 when that sun rises.
Okay, well, this condition would prohibit that, so.
Then if we had to wait till 8, that could impose a safety risk on us.
So you're really asking sunrise to sunset?
Correct, and
So-
that's the guidance that's set. We're just trying to keep within the guidance of the FAA.
We'd probably need to ask
practice.
staff why they used 8 a.m. instead of sunrise, because I don't know if they had a concern about the noise at that early hour of the day. If that may have been why they used 8, I don't know, though.
Amy Heiler. The recommendations were actually proposed by the applicant. Barbara sent them over and we reviewed them and we
So
accepted.
the applicant proposed 8.
Yes. The recommended conditions were proposed by the applicant.
Well, let me just ask you, how loud are these devices?
No more than your average weed eater or lawnmower. Because basically the motor that we have is such. It's a two-stroke, usually 172 horsepower, 72 cc, 25 horsepower motor. And in all essence, if you had to compare it to that, that would be the closest comparison. If we had the video, I'd have an obviously demonstration to answer your question. If it ain't gonna happen. Okay. So anyway.
But I mean, to answer Mr. Hansel's question, I mean, these conditions can be more restrictive than FAA regulations.
Yeah.
So, but it would really be up to the planning commission to decide whether at that noise level, you're okay with it occurring at that hour of the day. And that, you probably need to hear from the opposition before you make that decision.
I agree with you on that and putting the shoe on the other foot. And if that would be, I would fall within the compliance of any kind of noise ordinance of the county. And I know that happens, I think I looked it up, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something of that nature. Obviously, we wouldn't go into the latter part of it because that's clearly in the nightfall. But if it was something that we had to abide by a county noise ordinance, I completely concur with that.
Okay, let me go to one question then,
Yes.
because we're talking about the noise here, and I think that's the reason that the 8 a.m. was there. I assume. But if you go to number 8, which is a condition, how many people? It says basically there's no fee involved for charging people to take off. And how many people would be taken off on your property, let's say between the hours of say 7 and 10 a.m.?
I would say 1 to 2.
Okay, thank you.
On average.
Okay.
1 to 2. There may be maybe once every couple months we might have 3 or 4, but that's very rare.
So the
Typically,
maximum
it's-
would be 4 between the hours of, say, 7 and, well, all.
And that's a stretch. If
Okay.
the maximum would be 4, that would be a stretch.
Thank you.
Typically, it's 1 to 2 people.
Yeah, I've had these things fly over my property before, not from your area, I don't know from where, and they're pretty quiet. I think y'all are crazy as heck, but I mean, you know, they're pretty quiet, actually.
And they're getting quiet. Just to build on that, as technology progresses, they're advancing more quieter mufflers, because typically we have these helmets with noise canceling devices on our head to protect our hearing from hearing loss. But still, you got that muffler and the engine right behind our heads. So they're continuously updating the advancement of silence in these motors. So, and then we're in the whole group of guys that we fly in the county area. We definitely comply. We enjoy the sport. We want to maintain that good picture in the public's eye. So we're not trying to get down and kick people's shingles off their head roofs or anything like that. We maintain a respectable height in complying with noise. And that's why most of the groups, and I'm speaking for my group, will comply on a noise ordinance if we want to add to that, beyond the FAA rule for us, a noise ordinance not to exceed the county ordinance that's currently standing.
What, if staff could just look up, while we have the speakers, when our noise ordinance says you have to have, it changes decibel levels at a certain time in the morning, but I don't remember what that, so if you all could look that up while speakers are speaking so we can address that.
Okay.
I'll
So-
continue on if
Go ahead.
we get to
Go right
more.
ahead.
Okay. I think we left off in slide on page 11, yes. But, okay, that's our landing heading towards the west, coming in from, going towards the east, heading from the west. The next slide, page 12, is that same one, just showing over the survey picture. And then that also, unfortunately, it showed a video of a pilot coming in from the south, following basically McKendree Road, and making a landing in the center of the field. But no video, unfortunately. Power off, silence. Basically, in this video, really depicts, it's a shame we can't play it. The only thing you hear is the wind going through his sails, landing. It's that quiet. Like I said, the safety purposes that's measured and continuously practiced in our group, everybody that I fly with, is 200 feet up, power goes off, and you come in as a glide. Safety. You don't want to, because if you trip and fall, you don't want that prop being spinning and coming down you. It'd be bad news. Next slide, please, and at page 15. Basically, this is just a still picture. This is actually a shot. It's at the intersection of Tyndall and McKendree, and I wanted to point out in this shot that the lack of livestock activity that's on the property of Gina. The only thing you can see, and I'll tell you, you can't really make it out, but towards the top of that slide, there's a little tan dot and a brown dot. That's 2 horses right there. Other than that, there was nothing else, and this is the norm that we see. Very lack of any kind of livestock, any kind of disturbances. And then one video, it's a shame it wasn't panned. Actually, I made a video of this too. I was flying along Tyndall at about the same height, which is about 150, 200 feet up, going along Tyndall, and I went completely past, and where you see those 2 horses there, they remained grazing and did not move while I was continuous on this. Where the video's there. As a matter of fact, I got the thumb drive. If you wasn't going to keep it after to review it on something that's more compliant with the format, you would see the video. It speaks for itself. I'm more than happy to, keep that and use it. Also, next slide, please. Page 16. This is a picture. That ain't what I got. See if there's a picture 2. It should keep going. Okay, picture 2. That's it. This is actually a picture of totally Gina's property. I wanted to depict in this photo shot lack of livestock. There's nothing out there, and that's the way it usually is. And this is in prime times where we actually do our flying. I'm not sure if this was the morning or evening, but they're just not there. Maybe they're there out where we're not flying, but that's what we see on a normal basis, lack of livestock. Next slide, please, page 17. This is actually for the reference of the commission. The only parts out of FAR Part 103 that applicable to powered paragliders, us, Part 1 and Part 1.5. And we're following the part, primarily all these are applicable points, but I would like to point out the one, it's number 1 after the letter E, under weight less than 254 pounds empty weight. Well, our typical motorized or our power unit on our back is typically weighs about 55, 60 pounds full of fuel. And that's about it. So, you know, that's how we fall. I mean, if any human goes up into the air by some kind of means, the FAA has to bring us into some sort of regulation, and this is what applies to us. Also, in this part right here, the Part 103.15, it says no person may operate an ultralight vehicle, which we're considered as that, as Part 1 dictates, over any congested area of city, town, settlement, or any open air assembly of people. Now, also, there's a link for your reference if you wanted to expand that. I've applied down there. Going forward on that, please go to page 18. Next slide, please. This right here is an aeronautical chart published by the FAA regularly, so it stays currently up to date. What I want to point out on this slide is page 33 of the link there on top. This is what FAA defines as a congested or populated area. It's defined as a section, borderline, and filled in by yellow. Next slide, please. Now, this is the current FAA as dated 16 August 2018 to January, all the way going to January 2019. This is the aeronautical chart published by the FAA for the Tampa and the region where we fly in. Now, the chart on the left shows the Tampa region. You see all those sections in yellow. That is considered by the FAA congested and populated area. Now, go to the section, or the clipping that I have on the right, and you see that little red box up there that I've kind of called, that is the Chicora Field. That's where we fly, right there. And you can mark that by looking at the San Antonio. And then that blue line that goes horizontal, that's State Road 52. And you see then that along 52, you see that's pilot country, just using some references to show you that it is State Road 52. But anyway, getting back to that red box, that's where we fly at. As you can see, there is no, by definition of FAA, congested or populated areas that we fly over. That being said, you know, we have the right in the vehicles we fly to fly, you know, right off 5 feet off the ground if you want to. Of course, using good principle and judgment, you know, without causing harm to people or property. But I just wanted to mark that we are not considered in a congested area by consideration of the FAA. And I believe that is all. If we never got the videos up, no, unfortunately. Is there any further questions?
Any further questions, Chris?
How far can you get in a flight?
Well, it also depends on the weather. If you're going with, let's say, no wind conditions, and you've got a full tank of gas, so you can roughly get about 2 hours of flight time. The typical wing, canopy, some people say that's a parachute. We call it a wing because it provides lift. Generally gives you about 25 to 35 miles per hour. So you need to do the math. 25, 35 miles an hour, straight line distance over a 2 hour period. You can cover some distance. But wherever you're going, typically you got to come back. So take into account.
You have to file a flight plan with these or anything?
No, you do not, sir, because as stated in the FAA, we are under the weight limit of 254 pounds. By that saying, we do not have to register or have an N number on our aircraft because we are not considered a certified aircraft.
Okay.
All right, anything else from anybody here? Okay, Erica, how much time did we use? Pardon me? Okay, very good, thank you. So if there's nobody else to speak,
Barbara, do you have any other comments from your
Barbara?
team there?
I'd just like to add one thing before I dismiss. The basic function of us getting and using this property is we've become a very good friend of Carol. And with her love of aviation and her previous years in the Navy and mine being in the Army and other members being military and the love of aviation, She's actually opened up her property, and she likes just watching it. We like being with her and spending time with her and her property. And in all lamest terms, it's just a bunch of guys that gets together and like to talk, sit around, have coffee afterwards, or breakfast afterwards, or before. And that's always, it's just a fun sport to do. There's no get-rich scheme through it, or any kind of training, or any kind of, other than just a few guys getting together and meeting and collaborating with somebody that has love and passion of aviation with the sport with us. And it just so happens that person has property that we can actually use and enjoy and launch from. And we usually launch from the property. We get up, I have a saying, get up and get out. We get up and we go wherever we're going to. We go away. We go miles away. Because it just really isn't fun launching and just going around in circles in a spot. So that's no fun. So we usually launch, and it usually takes us a few minutes to launch. And once we're up, we're gone. And we won't come back until an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours later. And usually when we're coming in, you don't even know we're coming in because we're motor out. So that's about it. It's all I can think about to add to that.
Okay, anything else then? All right, I appreciate your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And would you like to come up and speak, Gina? State your name and address. And
Gina Hester, 30520 Tyndall Road, Wesley Chapel. My video's working?
And I think, do you have a video?
I have 3 videos.
Maybe we'll have better luck on this one.
Not like I got another disk drive with me.
Erica, she has 15 minutes.
Okay, just pause it. And I'll tell you when to play. So you know that my property is on the east side of hers. We've already established that there's wetlands. On the west side, they have a lot of power lines, which is why I believe they use my property to ascend and descend. I want to play this video that she just had up. The night video. This is a typical night of them coming over my property. They're telling, hey, yeah, go ahead, start it. This is the 2 of them. Now, as you can see, that little box over there is one of my shelters. And he's coming in. And you can kind of hear how loud they are. And they're coming over my property. Now, what I've researched is the navigatable space in which the public has a right to transit without affecting a landowner's property rights has been set at the height of 500 feet in urban or suburban areas and 350 feet above the surface or tallest structure in rural areas. Now, this is the typical of how they're coming in my property. Not only do they not turn their motors off, what happened? He went up back around again and he ascended his motor again, louder, came around and came back down with the motor on really loud. See, they do not shut off their motors, what he's saying. Get it going? Do you want a different disc? Okay.
We won't count this against our time.
Thank you.
We will count this.
It's not my problem. Is there a way to turn up the volume at all? Now, I'm in my house at this time to give you a distance for when they're coming in. So the first guy lands.
Looks like his motor's off.
And that's all my property to the left. His motor is on. He turns it off, and he turns it back on again. That's my property. This video's a little bit long, but the other ones are shorter. But I want to show you here how low. What's the video died again?
Do you have another, is another one of those videos show the same thing, or not really?
Yeah, I do. But on the rest of the video, I want to show how low they're coming over my property to actually land on Carol's property, which is one of my big issues. Maybe you can try to fast forward it. Let's go around again.
What time is that? What time of the day is that?
It's at dusk.
What time?
I would say about 8 o'clock at night. The date's up there, but it doesn't have the time. So this is kind of a typical landing over my property. If you could get the next video ready, it has the horses. So they've already read the hazardous 103 operations, but it said this section prohibits an ultralight operation from engaging in activity which jeopardizes the safety of persons or property in the ground or the air. Yes, scared horses. So this is why most of my horses aren't out in the pasture when they're flying. Here's one of their ultralights coming over my property right here. And if you look, as he comes around, look down and you'll see my horses. They say they don't see most of my horses out in the pasture. That's because I've had to keep them in the barn or keep them in the top right pasture, because my pastures, as you saw in the video, goes all the way along and down here. And they've been so scared, and I don't want them, if you know anything about wild Mustangs, they take helicopters and they chase the wild Mustangs till they get exhausted, and then they corral them. Well, these horses don't have that space. They'll just run into the fence. And I think he even flew over the wetlands when he was landing on that video. So now I've had my pastures being restricted because of them flying over my property. So he says he doesn't see a lot of horses. The horses are in during the day and out at night in the summertime. Nope, that was the same video. If you can just get ready but don't hit, the next one will say, sorry, I just had surgery in my eyes. So basically, I got to the point where I had to shut down 4 of my 5 pastures because the horses were so scared that when I'd let them out at night, I had to let them out right before when they got done flying, or right before so they'd stay back to the house, so they'd have to run over. They'd be next to the gate in front of the house, so the pasture goes all the way down. The horses would stand right here until after they land because they were so scared. Now, I've had this ranch for 20 years. I built this place myself, and this is what I've dreamt of my whole life, is to have a nice, quiet, peaceful place for my animals to take care of them. They're my love, and that's my whole world. Now, the powered parachute, some of them actually have big wheels that lay down. They're extremely loud, too. And they came by the other day. Loss of income, yes, I board horses since 2003. I have a county license. I've been approved by the county, and I can't take any more horses in because they deem my property unsafe for the horses. So do I have a lot of horses out there right now? No, not as many as I could, because I can't bring them in because people are scared because this is what's happening.
You have a letter to that effect?
Huh?
You have a letter to that effect?
No, I don't. I don't have anything with me.
Do you have something in writing?
No.
Who deemed it
I deem it, I deem it unsafe.
Well, you said they, so.
Oh, well, the people that want to board with me, they come out and say, no, this isn't safe.
Go ahead.
Because horses are fight and flight animals. They have eyes on the side of their head. They see something coming above them, they just bolt, and I can't take that liability. They don't want that liability. Go ahead and play that next video. These, let me get this. Okay, so I'm on my back of my house when this man flies back. He comes really close, you could see, to my house. He comes around the front of my house. You can see like the corner of my house. And he comes to the front. Get around the corner. And you'll see when he comes over, now my property to the fence where the power line is about 30 feet. He just makes it over the power line. You can see my ridge line of my house, and you'll see on the left, you'll see the red barn, and that little thing that's sticking up, you see above that, that's for my goats to play in. That pasture he's flying through right now is actually my riding area, and then you can see the top of Carol's, top of the roof of her house. And so I can't ride in it because they're flying over it, but they're dangerously close. One time they actually flew up my pasture, almost hit my tree. I heard the guy screaming, takes a left and just went over my barn. So the FAA says 91.13 careless and reckless operation, aircraft operation for the purpose of air navigation. No person may operate an aircraft in a careless or reckless manner so to endanger the life or property of others, which is I think I showed you in that video. I have contacted the FAA, and Carol talked to Bill Edwards, and Bill Edwards told me that she would not give the men's information to them, and that they were a club. And I'm just quoting what Bill Edwards says here. The liability that I have, not just for my horses, but my structures, my property, that I've worked so hard, I feel is in danger every day that they fly. That's my opinion, because I don't want to pick people out of trees or power lines. Has it taken away my quiet use? Absolutely. My quiet use and enjoyment of my property with these guys flying by at 7 o'clock every Saturday morning or Monday through Friday, Sunday, I don't get to sleep in. I have these things flying over my head. They are louder than people think. I can't ride. The whole property, which they showed that it's my riding area. I have a trail around the property and in the woods and around the property, which I can't use anymore because they scare the horses. The property that they showed you is right butted up against my property. I mean, it's literally 10 feet from my property that these guys are flying over my fence and landing. It's only about a 10-foot. So, and then one of the guys, he comes back, he'll come to Carol's property, and he'll sit there and he goes around, and Carol's property to my property from her house is maybe 50 feet, and he sits there and he goes around and he dive bombs around it, which I don't feel is safe at all. And let's see. One time they were moving the dirt back into the wetlands to give them, I guess, more land, and all of a sudden I had a model airplane flying over my head. I guess he was, trying to bother me. And then on the 3rd of February of this year, I was in my goat pen with a friend. I had a drone over my head, hovering over my head. I was sick of the harassment from these guys that I've had to put up with for a year and a half since I started fighting this. So I had to put 22 panels, a board-on-board fence where the Carol's house actually sits to try to get some privacy from them. Carol's actually called the county on the man at Kitty Corner across from her because she accused him of, he had a big, huge garage at the time of running a construction company because she didn't want big trucks driving by her house, but she doesn't care if a powered parachute flies over her house, I guess. Now, opposed down the street, there's a helipad down the street, and this guy's been flying for years, and a helicopter goes straight up and down. Helicopter does not come sideways over other people's property, goes straight up and down. That man's property also goes out to he has like 50-some acres. I don't know if he still owns it now, but it goes out to McKendree, it goes to Overpass, it comes down Elam, plus there was a lot of acreage on the east side. If you got a new map today, there is one person there, but that one person who bought that land chose to live next to helipad. I don't choose to live next to a powered parachute field. There's also another ultralight field in Zephyr Hills. So this would make 2 in Zephyr Hills because I think I'm still considered unincorporated Zephyr Hills. They have had, like he said, they've had times where they've had other men over there. One time they've had up to 5 men flying out of there at one time, which I don't believe 5 people can fit in that field and fly out at the same time, and that's what they do. They all fly out at the same time. So my video today showed you that they are using my property. They are loud over my property. And that I don't believe this is a proper spot for this field to be in. I don't know if they can actually do this without flying over my property because they have such restrictions in the back wetlands and they have the power lines on the other. And like he said, with the wind, there are times he has to use my property. I don't want my property used at all. I want them to comply with the FAA rules, but I feel like I have a lot of liability right now with the way that they're flying, as you see in this video, over my property. And that's what one more thing is I also feel that if this gets approved, it will drop my property value because to have a horse ranch next to this, no matter if it's me or somebody else, I think my property value will greatly drop, that I could never sell it for what it's worth. So whether I have 2 horses, 10 horses, or somebody wants to bring in cows, I still think that these machines starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, flying over the heads of livestock is dangerous. Now, if they're up to the flight, up to the, where they fly from, their top height, that's one thing. But I'm talking about ascending and descending height next to my property. That's what I have for you today.
All right, before you step away, are there any questions from up here, David?
So how long has the operation been, how long have they been in operation?
Since May of last year.
Did you file a complaint with the county?
Yes, I did.
That's how this originated?
Yes, I did.
And so, I guess I'll ask staff, I didn't see any reference to a complaint. Was it, what happened?
So I contacted Code, Amy Heiler, I contacted Code Enforcement. They did not have one on file for this property.
But the person I talked to, his name was Dave from the county. I have his number. He was the code inspector. I don't know how I got lost, but I was the original person who filed the complaint. It was April or May of last year.
And that would trigger the applicant coming in for conditional use? I mean, normally we don't get conditional uses coming in after the fact, right, unless there was a complaint filed. So right, that's what I'm trying to figure out how we got this.
So initially the application did come in under the stating that there was a violation, but I contacted Code Enforcement to get that document, and they said that there was nothing filed for this. So.
So in your opinion, how many flights are there a week?
Probably about, it could be anywhere between around 8. It depends, like you said, at the time of the year. I think in the summer they fly a lot more. They fly almost every day because, the weather's, depending on the weather. And they're going to fly in the morning because at night it's probably a storm. Usually storms around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But they start their engines exactly at 7 o'clock. They'll start up. So, because they're going with the noise ordinance. Now, I don't know, that part I don't know about time-wise. I'm just telling you when they fly. And I have a lot of video of the actual time that they flew, and it was around between 7 and 7:30.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So you said you filed a complaint with FAA, or you?
No, I called and made a complaint to FAA. They called Carol, and Carol would not give Bill Edwards, and I have his email and phone number, would not give them the guy who's flying their information so he could talk to them and ask them, just talk to them or have the FAR out.
Okay, well, I'm not understanding why that stops FAA from investigating your complaint.
I asked him the same thing too. I said, you are the FAA. Why don't you just go out there? And he says, well, I have to comply with, I can't just walk on their property without, I still would get a trespassing charge just like you would.
Well, but he can go to your property. I mean, why didn't you call the FAA out to your property for,
Well, I asked him he could come to my property, he could come to her property, and he didn't want to come out. I've done my due diligence. I can't help it if somebody doesn't want to do their job.
okay.
Do you have a written response from him?
I probably have it in an email, but like I said, it was a year and a half ago.
So I just want to be clear with you, I mean, this body is going to decide whether this conditional use is appropriate for this property, but the county does not enforce FAA regulations. You cited a number of FAA regulations that you believe they're in violation of, but we
I
have no ability-
understand.
We have no ability to enforce those regulations.
I understand that. I just don't want them, I want to show you how they are flying over my property, and I don't want them on my property.
Okay.
And how dangerous they are flying over my property. That's why I don't want this, because I don't want them over my property.
Any other questions from up here?
Yeah, you indicated that you board horses on your property, correct?
Yes,
And you have a permit or some type of
yes.
permit to do that. How many horses are you allowed to permit on your property?
It's 3 per acre.
Okay, help me do the math on that then. I don't know how
I
many.
have 16 acres, but I have a lot of woods.
Okay, 3 times 16.
I've had up to 11 horses.
Okay. And currently, how many do you have now?
I just have 3 now. Or actually, I have 2. One just passed away.
So you have a loss of income based on the noise
I
factor.
can't bring any more boarders in because everybody sees the property and sees these flyers and sees the field, and they're scared to have their horses there, and the liability for me is great too.
But it's on, you don't have any documentation to that effect, though, do you? Nothing.
No, I didn't have, I mean, they just come out and they talk to me and they see the property and they leave and they tell me they just don't feel it's safe.
Okay. You also mentioned the word Mustang horses. Do you have Mustang horses on your property?
I used to have a Mustang, I don't know. I was just giving an example that the way that they herd Mustangs is, I'm just saying that horses are scared of things flying above their heads.
Okay, I was just trying to evaluate the.
I was just trying to give an example.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, that's the only question I have was.
Okay. Chris, anything? Kevin?
Gina, do you agree or disagree with the flight pattern exhibits that they showed in their presentation? I mean, are they operating differently than they presented
Yes.
in their presentation?
I showed you that. I think I showed that on the video. They're not. They're using my property.
Yeah, it's hard, I mean, obviously in the videos, it's hard to see property lines, but that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, everything you saw in the video was my property because I was standing in the back of my house. So if you saw his shot of where my house is and where the barns are, I'm just literally in the back of my house and I'm shooting out over my pastures.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, nothing else? All right, thank you very much. All right, Barbara?
So Barbara, before you start, I have a legal question for you and your client. So explain to me why it's not a trespass to fly over somebody's property.
Because it's not a trespass.
Well, but that's not the end. I mean, what does the right to someone's land not go into the air? I mean, that
Right, that's my understanding, is that, and what she's talked about 500 feet and 300 feet, those regulations don't, my understanding is they do not apply to the power paragliding that they're doing. So they're not using her property. If they were, she'd have a private claim against them, but they're not using her property. They don't take off on her property, they don't land on her property. Do they go over her property? They explain that yes, they do.
so it's your legal opinion that that's not a trespass? That's what I'm asking you.
I have not formed a legal opinion,
Well, I mean, from my perspective,
but she has if that is
Barbara.
the case, she has a private
Barbara.
remedy.
wait a minute. From my perspective, it seems to me that that would be a problem for any aircraft that would fly over any property.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question. Obviously, and I admit I don't know the law on when a flight over someone's property becomes a trespass. I don't know what if it's the 300 feet or the 500 feet, I don't know at what point something becomes a trespass when you're over somebody's property. That's really, I don't know the answer, I'm asking the question.
I don't know the answer either.
Okay.
Well, from what, I'm not positive, but I have flown a lot, so I think for a regular aircraft, you're not supposed to go below 500 feet. Now, that may not be the case for an ultralight. I suspect it's not the case.
Right, a power paraglider.
Does your
which
client
is-
know
so-
the answer to this question about what height you have to be above?
Why
Right,
don't you come back
they
up?
can explain the regulations as it applies to their use much better than I can.
Okay, let's,
Because they're having to comply with them.
Please state your name again.
Randall Crouch. You were right, hit the nail on the head, sir. With in regards to those yellow forms with the unincorporated, incorporated, and we're under the 254-pound dry rule. We're not certified aircraft. Being in and flying in an unincorporated, unpopulated area, that 500 rule, altitude rule does not apply to us. So like I said, we can fly at 5 feet off the ground, but still following the law of not causing harm to or damage to personal property, person or property.
so you could be as close as a foot off the ground on her property. I just want to be clear because I want to understand this.
That's correct.
You could be as close as a foot off the ground on her property,
Yes.
as long as you're not touching any of her property.
As long as I'm not physically making contact.
The FAA does not consider that as you invading her property.
Correct. With flying, in regards to flying power paragliders, as we do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like to also reiterate that we have, or never have been, a club. Like I said earlier, it's just a few friends getting together and flying. As seen in her videos, and I believe you guys called attention to it, as coming down when crossing over into even on her property, engines were turned off. That one time that I had to come around again is because my partner, my fellow flight partner right there, he landed first. I didn't want, as for safety purposes, he was in the middle of my target, so I went around again. I was within safe perimeters. I had a strobe light working in the FAA rules and the twilight conditions. I went around again, not over house, stayed in the woods over that safe altitude, and when you saw me coming in, killed my motor, and I came in. Also, other videos that also show other pilots killing their motors and coming in being respectful. That's how you do when you land. You kill the motor. So everybody's falling in compliance. Nobody's coming in and touching her property, either it be a tree or a fence or anything. And also, I'd like to point out that there is some of the noises, and she's talking about drones and airplanes. Right on the other side of her property, the Tyndall Street, is a very active, 7 days a week, RC model airplane club that flies all kind of RC planes. They're called Can-Am Flyers. You go on Google Maps and they pop up because they are an established business club, or radio control club. And they are going every day with these screaming racing planes. They're called pylon racers. And it's these little bitty planes that go like 150 miles an hour, and they are screaming. And they do that every day, especially on the weekends. So, and then on top of that, that's a dirt road. You got kids going up and down with ATVs and motorbikes. I mean, these things are factors that are way exceed this noise and actually nuisance limit, in my opinion, than what we do. Given the fact when we launch, we're gone. She shows us coming back. Now, if she showed evidence, a picture or a video of just constantly just circle and circle and circle, then I would say, yes, you got something. It doesn't, she don't got it because it doesn't happen. I can't explain anymore. We just are not living up to or practicing our flight patterns as she states. I do have some other fellow pilots that would give a test that actually use the property that would like to speak. Scott, did you want to get in?
Use your time as you wish. How much time are we at, Erica? Emma? That's in addition to the original 16? Yeah, you don't count when we ask questions, right? Okay. All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Carbone. I reside at 6381 No Dock Road in Spring Hill, Florida. I am a fellow pilot along with Randy. Just to give you an overview of what we're talking about, because I can see the bewildered look on your faces of what we do. It's basically a motor that is strapped on our backs, and we have a wing. We start it, we warm up the two-stroke motor, we run into the wind approximately 20 feet, and within 20 to 40 feet, we're already in the air. Now, I've only flown at this particular field a handful of times, and the reason being is because there's an obvious issue between Carol and, I don't know her name, but the neighbor. So out of respect for Carol, we don't fly this property 7 days a week. 8 flights a day. We just don't do that, not just because of the weather permitting, and we all work. It's more to give peace to the neighbors. Now, Carol's allowing us to use this land just to take off, and as Randy said before, we take off and we go. We're only in that area for takeoff and landings. The video that you've seen was it was a flight pattern, because if you're a pilot, you know you have to do a pattern, and it's all about safety. We purposely do not fly over this person's house. We all know the rules. Stay away from this person's home. We don't fly dangerously. We get up and we go, and our normal altitude is about 1,000 feet. And there are other, not clubs, but other pilots that live in the remote area that fly as well. So I just want to establish that we are aware that it is a nuisance, or it could be a nuisance, so we purposely stay away from this woman's property and livestock. And I'm personally, I have never seen any livestock at her home, or horses, cattle, or whatnot. And that's another thing that we do, is we respect people with livestock. We don't want to give ourselves a bad name or cause the situation we're in right now. So if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them about what we do and what the motor is and how loud it is. It's a two-stroke motor, gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
No.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Britt. I live at 15406 Woodway Drive in Tampa, Florida. I am Carol's daughter. And how this all even came about. These are my friends, and we all go up to my mom's. We hang out. Regardless, we may not even be flying. We may not even be up in the air. We're all hanging with my mom. I think the one time we had 5 people was my mom's 75th birthday. That was the most people we had at one time. But these are my friends. It's my mom's house. It's going to be my house. It's going to be my daughter's house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm here to tell you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're gonna have to give the dog's name.
That's Ziva, my Hungarian German Shepherd,
Just tease it.
and my lifeline.
Hey, your name?
I'm Carol Roth. Some of you may know me. I have 3 things to say. One, in the past, I've watched Gina's pattern of horse ownership, and during the summer, she puts her horses out at night and keeps them in the barn during the day. Not because of me or anybody else, because it's hot. That's been her pattern of ownership. 2, I don't know how she can know what I spoke to Mr. Edwards about. She wasn't on the extension. He did call me. Do you believe everyone that calls you says who they are, and you're going to give information out to a stranger on the phone? How do I know who he is? He could be her brother. I don't know who he is.
Right.
So I told him if he had any questions, he could send it to me in writing, and I gave him my address. I never refused to speak to him because I was uncooperative. I was just being smart, not to talk to a stranger and give any information over a phone. And the third thing is, really, besides being my friend, I love them. They come to my home. When we had my 75th birthday, it was also Randy's X amount of years. 25, right? Right. Birthday the day before. We had 45 people out there. There were parents, grandparents, little babies, children. There were 4 flyers. I think 5 came, but he decided not to take off. And that's the use of my property. And I got a call from the county accusing me of having a fly-in because Miss Hester called and complained. I had a birthday party, not a fly-in. As far as landing 4 wheels on my property, which they fly over sometimes to wave and say hello, they can't land on my property. I don't have enough acres. They would get hurt. So she doesn't have a film of that because it never happened. And I'm sure you, she'd be out there trying to film it. This is what I've lived with for 15 years. She's been uncooperative and nasty. She put a fence up on my property that it didn't belong there. I tore it down. This is exactly what she does. She complains about everyone. I have never complained, and if she thinks I have, let her ask me to my face. Let her come and talk to me. But she's good at climbing fences. That's why I had a call about trespassing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Barbara, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you. All I would add is that, from my understanding, and they can explain it better, but what I've looked at with the FAA jurisdiction, that jurisdiction is to make sure that they're staying within the requirements that the 254 pounds, to make sure that they're not flying something is regulated. So that's it. The whole what level and who's flying where, and that's not what they're looking at. So the other thing, just put this in perspective. This is an ag area, agricultural land use, agricultural zoning. All the activities, people shoot on their property, people ride ATVs, motorcycles. We're having to go through this process to come here to you to get a conditional use, to use a 20-acre piece of property to have their friends fly in and out. You know, you've heard the testimony about there's already an airfield with the little airplanes in this area. So that's just a pattern of how people use their agricultural property. We're available if you have any other questions.
Are there any questions from the guys? Anything?
So just to clarify the earlier question that was asked about the noise regulations, there's actually an exception in our noise ordinance for ordinary noise from aircraft. So as a general rule, aircraft are not subject to our noise regulations. That being said, if the Planning Commission wanted to place a condition that this operation comply with our noise regulations, I think you have the power to do that, but you'd have to specify what decibel level, what hours of day, things like that, because the noise ordinance doesn't on its face cover this type of operation. So you would have to be very specific about, you can't just say they gotta comply with the noise ordinance.
Right.
We'd have to be very specific about where the noise would be measured from, the decibel level, time of day, things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, one question real quick before you walk away. I mean, is the applicant, would they be willing to limit, it doesn't look like the conditions limit the number of flyers at one time.
I can ask them that.
I mean, there is a condition in there, use of takeoff and landing shall be by private invitation only, but, I mean, quite frankly, you could invite the county out there. I mean,
Okay, I can ask them that.
I don't think you want to do that, but.
Okay. And then you heard the correction to my 8 a.m. why they would like, I think normally the noise ordinance, I think, David, one of your questions was, when does it start and stop, or change decibel levels at 7? So if you wanted a rule, instead of 8, it would be 7. So they're just correcting that error in my 8 o'clock.
But that's really a bigger question about, do you want to regulate noise as part of this operation? I mean, is that...
And you're talking about regulating the number of flights.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Well, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, this, obviously, shouldn't be as hard as it is, but I mean, we don't tell people when they can mow their yards, and that's
Right.
essentially what we're talking about is a lawnmower engine.
Right.
I mean, you're in an ag area, you're in ag land. I mean, people can use their tractor whenever they want. I mean, usually people use common courtesy. I think really all I can sit up here and ask is that when you guys are up there flying, if this does get approved, that use common courtesy, don't put yourself in danger, put the horses in danger by flying purposely over her property. I mean, make sure I don't have a problem with the exhibits you showed as far as the flight pattern goes. I mean, it looks like you're doing everything you can on paper to stay away from her house. Again, when I see the videos, and granted, we weren't able to see your videos because of some difficulties with the computer, but, I mean, just, my position is as long as you guys use as much caution and courteousness as you can for her property, I don't see how we have a choice in the matter. I'd like to move that we approve this application. I think there's two revisions, one limiting, and I don't know if you guys have a feeling for number of people. I mean, is it 4, is it 2? 5?
I would say,
Come on up here, get up here.
I would say, sir, I would say the lowest, and that's lowest and most common, is 2 to 4. There is some occasions, like if we had a birthday party that we like to do a cookout or something, or 4th of July or something, that number may go, I've never seen it higher than 7 or 8. Usually 10 people show, but one time we had 10 people show, but they decided to opt and not take off. But I'd say worst case scenario 10, usual basis 4.
Okay, well, I thought the question was asked earlier about normal flights in a month, and it was 4.
The times, yes, the repetitions of times, that's correct. But it's say if we was, and that'd be a normal basis. Like I said, if we was having a celebration, like a 4th of July cookout or a birthday party, we may have.
But to be clear, I don't think Mr. Girardi is talking about limiting the number of people on the site.
Sorry.
I think he's talking about limiting the number of flights per day or per
day.
month or
Understood.
whatever.
All right, thank you very much.
Honestly, we don't, the planning commission doesn't regulate how many people congregate on this property. They regulate the flights. That's what's before us is the flights, not how many people go to a birthday party.
Understood.
So the question is, how many flights, what's the maximum number of flights you have? Are you talking about per day or per month is what you?
Either one. I mean, I just think we need a revised condition to include in here, language
Yes.
added to the approval condition.
I would say if we were, well, given that most of us work, and I don't think we can come out every day, you would say 2 per day, but that's really, in my opinion, an unrealistic number, since more on a week scale would be more appropriate. I would say on a weekly scale would probably be about 6 to 8 flights in a week, given in the height of our flying season would be a summer.
So let me speak for code enforcement a second, because I don't think our code enforcement officers will camp out there for a week. Okay, they're gonna want to know a maximum per day, because
I would say 2 per day.
so you're comfortable with a maximum of 2 per day.
Yes, that would be 2 pilots taking off and landing. That would constitute 2 flights.
And they can only take off and land one time? Or are you saying they can land, take off again?
I would say a flight constitutes a takeoff and a landing.
Okay, but if you have 2 pilots out there, from what you're saying, they can only take off and land, and then they have to go home. You don't ever go fly multiple times in a day?
If weather permits, and that's rarely, because like I said, in the height season, we have the thunderstorms, and it'd be a morning. But if you want a maximum number just for a safeguard, I would double that, say 4.
So 4 flights, meaning a takeoff and landing constituting 1 flight.
Correct.
All right, so we're just gonna add with a maximum of 4 flights per day to the end of condition 9. And then the other revision to the motion or amendment to the motion would be to change condition 11 to be from dawn to dusk instead of 8 a.m. to dusk.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion?
You know, this is a tough one for me. I can see property rights on your side of the fence, and I think that the individual who has brought the complaint obviously is not well, no, I won't say that, but my concern is that it's an economic issue to her. She boards horses there. She never indicated that she has lost any income from it, other than numeric value for the horses that she could have versus the number she currently has. Yet there's no proof that that she has indicated that people have declined boarding horses there. But on the other hand, it makes sense. They are noisy. She showed that in her videos. They did fly over her property. I don't know about this state, but in some states I've lived in, you have personal airspace above your house. It's not very high, but I think it's a little bit more than what you guys fly from when you were trying to land. So, with that said, I think I'll probably end up voting negative on this one.
To be clear, I just want to be clear with the planning commission, even if you prove this, it doesn't stop the neighbor from bringing a private nuisance action against them if she has damages. So don't assume that just an approval of this precludes her from seeking damages against bringing a private cause of action.
Yeah, that's understood, but that's a financial burden on her, and obviously the folks that want to have these power-glided vehicles or landing craft on the property have obviously invested a considerable amount of time and energy and financial resources to try to bring this to this body. So then it becomes an economic issue for her if she wants to do that, but that's not our problem, that's hers. So I just want to...
I'm just saying, I don't want you to assume that somehow if you vote yes, that she's precluded from going after them for damages. She can still do that.
No, I think I'll vote no.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? I guess we need to just vote, I think.
Yeah.
Because of quorum, do we?
Yeah, we have a quorum.
You have a quorum?
We can
Yeah.
vote first.
Okay. All right, so all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
I'm opposed. Vote no.
Okay, so want to have a roll call?
Kevin Ryman,
4.
Peter Hansel,
No.
Jamie Girardi,
4.
Chairman Charles Gray.
4.
The vote is 3-1 with Peter Hansel voting nay. Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
I'd just like to remind both parties that this is a conditional use approval, so it'll be going to the Board of County Commissioners for final action.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Auribel Rivero. I work for Planning and Development. Today I will present item P7, which is a comprehensive plan amendment, large comprehensive plan amendment 1903, Highway Vision Plan update. And for this item, you will be acting as the local planning agency. For the record, I have handed out modifications to attachment 3, Exhibit B, pages 2 and 3, and that is text amendments for the comprehensive plan, amending the criteria for small and medium commercial nodes. I have also handed out a new attachment 9, which is proposed Vision Road changes. And I have handed out an updated attachment 2, Exhibit A. This is our adopted Highway Vision Plan. It was last updated in 2016. It indicates the existing and future collector and arterial roads. And what the comprehensive plan says about this map is that it is part of the future traffic circulation map series, and that it shall serve as the guiding document for development of an adequate network of major roadways for future years. The Highway Vision Plan is used during development review in conjunction with arterial and collector spacing standards, and the county will ensure that development occurs in a way which does not impair the ability of the county to develop the roads as indicated thereon. Amendments to the Highway Vision Map are either to improve the level of service on parallel congested roadways, to achieve coordination with the MPO Long-Range Transportation Plan, or they are amendments that are necessary to support proposed developments. I would also like to call your attention to our map 7.1 in the comprehensive plan, which is the existing functional classification map. It indicates existing arterial and collector roads. So the vision plan indicates existing and future arterial and collector roads, and the functional classification map indicates existing collector and arterial roads. This map was modified or updated in 2003, and historically the Department of Public Works used it to see which of the roads in the county classified for funding, for county funding for maintenance. The comprehensive plan indicates that this map is an official record of existing major roadways, roadways to begin construction or be functionally reclassified in the current or following 2 fiscal years. So what we are proposing today is to update the vision plan, make necessary changes, condense the information in the vision plan and in the functional classification map, and then change the title to Highway Vision Plan and Functional Class Map. If we're able to do that, then we can also delete this map, which is the 1999 Roadway Functional Classification Map, Map 7.1A. And then we would also be able to get rid of 724, Map 724, Future Roadway Functional Classification. And that would take us from 4 maps to 1 map. That would be to avoid redundant information, to make sure that all the staff is looking at the same map when they're making decisions, that there is no confusion between citizens and staff by looking at different information. I have handed out to you the attachment 9, which is, it really illustrates the proposed changes in the vision map. The blue roads have already been approved as collector or arterial roads. The red indicates a road that has either been realigned or a change in classification or added. And then we have a few that are dashed yellow and blue. It might be a little bit hard to see, but since I've given you the attachments, it's a little bit more clear in the paper. And those that are dashed in yellow and blue are roads or segments that we are planning to delete. If you have any questions in particular, you can ask after. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So if you could just better explain the financial implications of this map in terms of county maintenance of the roads. So my general understanding is the county will only pay to maintain, in the current county policy, as far as resurfacing a road, the county will only pay out of gas tax to resurface a road that is on this map. And that if it's not on this map, the county basically assesses the property owners. It's considered a local road for which the county assesses the property owners the cost of maintaining that road or resurfacing that road. Is that an accurate statement?
I believe that is the current process. I have here 2 representatives of Public Works.
Can we just get one of them up to confirm that that's how things operate?
Good afternoon, Board. This is Jamie Morales, and I represent Public Works on behalf of Branford Dunlop, who is the director. And your understanding is correct. Is currently that's the process. We are looking in ways to probably looking to interpret the current condition that we do our maintenance, define our maintenance, to see if we can use additional funds to add other road systems.
So what I'm saying is that when the average citizen of Pasco pays gas tax for maintenance of roads, these are the roads on this map are the ones that get maintained with that funding source.
Yes, during the current condition.
And if it's not on this map,
we
assume that the citizens who live on that road will pay it through a PVAS assessment.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the current condition.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, roughly speaking, by changing the way things are, by uniting the information and condensing it in one map, that does add approximately 115 lane miles to the public works maintenance or maintained roads. So, Denise, did you upload the last version of the? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. That's correct. Thank you. I didn't go through these. I'll go back. All right. So as I indicated before, if there are any particular changes that you have any questions on or that you would like to discuss, you may ask about those now or at the end of the presentation. We have also, we're also processing text amendments along with the map updates. And I will not go through them individually, but I will go through their intent. And they are to modify the title reference of map 736 and replace references to maps 71, 71A, and 724 with map 736 for maintaining consistency with map amendments previously mentioned during the presentation. To revise the requirements on hierarchy of access for consistency with the Pasco County Land Development Code. To remove the reference to Rule 14.2 in the Florida Administrative Code because that code section no longer applies to the subject comprehensive plan policy. To revise the process to update map 736 to reflect interdepartmental participation in the updating process, and to modify the utilization and function of map 736 for consistency with the county's current standard procedures, and finally to update criteria for classification of roads to include connectivity requirements. This is an example. I didn't want to go through all of them because it would get boring. But policy TRA 2.1.2. In here, we are indicating that we're using the Highway Vision Plan and Functional Class Map. That's how we will call it if this is approved today and it goes through the process. And that we will use that information along with access management standards as applicable in all these development reviews and also in PUDs, which is what we're currently doing. I'm only making sure that what is in the comprehensive plan is just consistent with our current practices. This is another example. I'm kind of cleaning up the language because in the past, the functional class map only reflected existing roadways. And now we are going to have this map reflecting existing and future roadways. So I'm cleaning up the language here. So with that, staff recommends that the local planning agency recommend approval to BCC of the proposed large comprehensive plan amendment 1903, modifying map 736 to update roadways and change title to highway vision plan and functional class map, repealing existing map 71, 71A, and 724, and providing for text amendments. Are there any questions for staff?
Chris?
So Ari, I have a question about vision roads that are future
Yes, sir.
and the alignment of those roads. So let me give you an example. So I've had this happen a couple of times where I'm out looking for property for the school district, and a piece of property I'm looking at has a vision road that currently does not exist. How is that alignment set? Because, you know, let's say I'm looking at a parcel of land and there's a vision road right through the middle of it, and it would impede my development of that for a school site. So it would make sense for me to shift the road over to one side or the other of the parcel. Now, I understand it has to connect with perhaps a road on another parcel, but how does that work, and how do I, if that were to happen, how do I make that happen?
Well, it really depends, but a lot of times the future alignments are mostly conceptual, and they may change once the county performs a route study or if DOT performs a PD&E, and we try to be updating our documents and whatnot, but
The other thing I would add to that is the owner of the land can effectively force the alignment by submitting an MPUD application, and then the zoning would then set the alignment of that road, because they would have to designate the location of that road in their zoning approval. So it's usually set either through the MPUD process or the PD&E route study process.
So could I set that, I know, for example, let's say I'm gonna go buy a piece of property for a school site, I have to come in here for school site consistency review.
In theory,
Can I
you could
at least theoretically propose that alignment when I do that? Because at that point, I haven't closed on the property, I'd like some assurance that.
I think that we could do that, yes. I think it could be set through that process.
All right.
I mean, you might have to do a little more detailed planning
Sure.
to do that, but I believe it could be set through that process.
Okay, that makes sense.
so there's other times that, for example, the right-of-way already exists for a
Sure.
road, and even because somebody has dedicated it or the county has purchased it or whatever reason, and even if we don't have a route study, it is likely that that might be the alignment because the right-of-way exists. But there's other factors like environmental factors, wetlands, that can make things change.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Anybody have a question?
I guess just, or I do have a couple questions. One, I'm glad you gave us this proposed versus existing, because that helped tremendously while we're reviewing to be able to compare, but I guess I can kind of imagine how what I would call the red roads or the proposed vision roads can get added in when new pieces of property come in, and I mean, you outline that in the agenda memo, but how does a road that was previously on the vision map go from blue to yellow, or be originally approved vision road and now it's no longer needed?
All right, so maybe we can go back, and it might be a little bit hard to see here, but right now, for example, South Branch, right next to the Suncoast and 54. The reason why that one is in yellow is because the constructed one is close to that one, and obviously it doesn't make any sense for us to have that vision road there anymore.
Sure.
And we would
No,
make that the existing one.
Where there's a parallel red one, I understand. It's where there's only the yellow one.
Right. So, for example, let's say North County Line Road. There's a segment from US 41 to Lake Iola that we've had to take out because it's not in Hernando County's work program, and there's rolling terrain. So it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes a development comes in and they, let's say, build a road, or then we no longer have a need for this other road that we thought we would need. That could be perhaps a general explanation of how that could happen too.
I think Ari is correct that it really depends on the road. So for example,
Right.
there's, if you look in East Pasco, there's a road that used to be the extension of Beardsley,
Yep.
just past Meadow Point.
Mhm.
So I think in negotiations with staff and the city of Tampa, they concluded that, and the property owners in that area, they concluded that the extension of Meadow Point down into the city of Tampa would serve the same function as that yellow road. And that the traffic didn't warrant needing the yellow road and that extension of Meadow Point over to Morris Bridge. You see what I'm
Yeah, that
talking
makes
about?
sense, yeah.
So it really just, you have to almost look at it road by road as to why
Right.
some of the yellows got removed and
There's not that many that got removed. There's probably
There's only a
3 or
handful on
4.
there. I was just asking the question, what about the roads that are on the south side of the county that are outside the county line that are blue? How does that work?
I'm sorry, you said in the south side, like in the, you mean?
Where David was just talking, there's some roads down there by Morris Bridge and stuff that are not within the county limits, but they're blue roads.
Right, that's what he was talking about, I believe. Those are they're in Hillsborough County, and that is kind of like to show the traffic pattern and why we would delete that segment of county line, to show that the traffic can still flow through these other roads in Hillsborough.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, I see the yellow line that runs along the county line, and I understand that's removed. But
Exactly.
there's a blue line through Hillsborough just south of that, that connects to Morris Bridge Road.
Exactly.
That really shouldn't be blue, correct? If you're
Well,
just showing-
it's to show, those are approved roads in K-Bar Ranch in Hillsborough County. So perhaps, yes, we don't really have any jurisdiction over those roads, but it was more to show the Planning Commission, the rationale and what's happening there.
I think she was just trying to show that those roads don't stop at the
They
county
don't stop
line.
at the county line, they do connect on for the future.
Exactly. Any other questions for staff?
Any other questions up here?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public would like to speak? Anybody would like to speak? Arnie, anything?
That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, for this item, you're acting as the local planning agency, so ultimately your determination is that you're making a recommendation about whether this is consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the proposed road changes in accordance with the county's plan?
I'll move approval,
Does that, and to be clear, does that include the changes that were handed out at the dais?
including the change.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
That's it, right?
What's next,
Motion for
Amy? That's
approval?
it? That's it?
Motion for approval?
To adjourn?
Motion
Adjournment, yeah, adjournment.
Yeah, second.
Getting ahead of
Approve that,
yourself.
that's right, we'll approve that.
All in favor? Aye. And we're out of here.
Thank you.
That one,